Okay, Bishara, say what you're doing. Say what you were saying again. So you meet with this group of people, and these groups of people were complaining about parents' trauma. Say it again. Go ahead, Bishara. Okay, I'll say it for you. So here's the thing. When we're speaking about the modern times that we're living in, many are actually complaining from the trauma from their parents, etc., because I personally consider it coming from the postmodern culture. The postmodern culture focuses on the individual and therefore considers that anything that you go through is really a result of you being a victim. Okay. So with the whole postmodern culture and the whole atheistic ideology that right now infiltrates a lot of these departments and a lot of these areas, psychology and the therapy, etc., regards that if you're going through any type of challenge, you are a victim. So considering that everybody is a victim, that's the culture that we're living in today. That in order for you to basically feel that you are not your own victim, in other words, it's not you that is causing the situation, the circumstances that you're in, and it is a result of someone else's fault against you. So, of course, who's the one that contributed in your life? It's basically your parents. So the culture today is accusing parents of being responsible. So the culture today, whenever you would meet with anybody, they're always complaining, our parents did this to us. I'm a result of one day my mom said this to me. It's a word that she said, and etc. The mentality, the mindset of displaying victimization is basically the modern culture. The modern culture is always about seeing yourself, not necessarily what can I do to face a challenge, but what happened to me that's making me weak in facing a challenge. That's the culture that we live in today. Islam tells you, on the other hand, that no, see and look at what your parents had contributed in order to make all the different potentials that you have today possible. If your parents might have perhaps failed in making something possible to making your life at least perhaps better than what you might have anticipated, well, at least be thankful for what you have and what they managed to contribute in your life. Islam tells you to redirect your vision from seeing your parents as responsible for any type of shortcoming or perhaps any type of a challenge that you were not capable of overcoming, to actually seeing that they had managed to give you potential. So Islam redirects your vision from seeing somebody else's shortcoming as something that you have to contribute, and what can you do to become stronger to face the challenge that probably is coming at you. That's number one. Number two, Islam redirects your vision from looking at yourself as a victim to seeing that what can I do to become a hero. Islam doesn't want you to see yourself as a victim, but Islam wants you to be the hero. Islam wants you to recognize your potentials and recognize the contributions that others had given you in order for you to be thankful and recognize your potentials in order to become a hero, to become a noble person. That's why Islam is always focusing. Look at the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala focusing, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Recognize the contributions that your parents had given you. Number three, the society that we're living in today is trying to reject everything that was in the past. So what does that mean? in the past, whether you're speaking about the Chinese culture, you're talking about the Indian culture, the Arabic culture, the Japanese, you list the culture, and there was always the focus on the emphasis of wisdom that our parents had, the emphasis on the wisdom that the elderly displayed. There was that focus, but in the modern culture, the emphasis is not a focus on the core and the wisdom and what it actually contains, but the modern culture, which basically is fed with all of this social media and all of this coming in, is basically feeding that what you display in terms of appearance, what you display in terms of power, what you display in terms of at least followers, influencers, whatever, all of that is actually based not on wisdom, but is based on really emptiness. So you would say a person that he's so famous, and what was he really doing? He was really just making videos that are just funny videos of really nothing of any importance. So therefore, in a society that regards no value is what makes value, that's that culture. That's the dynamic that you see displayed today in the relationship, in how many would come forward instead of recognizing the wisdom, the values, the tradition that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had taught us to value, the good tradition. You're seeing in our modern culture that no, traditional means backward. Traditional means they carry a lot of the laybacks that we're living in, etc. So you would say always the modern culture is looking at the whatever traditional, whatever wisdom is basically lacking value. And what contains the value is something that is new, something that is appearing in a certain way, because that's what makes it appealing. The modern culture is focused on what is appealing in terms of money, in terms of dunya, in terms of bringing in not necessarily the value of things, but the entertainment. So when you see a society that sells value in just what brings entertainment and what brings that dopamine, no surprise to how they would basically, you would see these people coming in and always complaining of how their mother one day yelled at them to clean their room, or how one day their father basically slapped them because they would even forget what they had done, but they just remember that their dad one day slapped them, or their father probably yelled at them, or probably said a word that they probably didn't mean. I'm not at all saying that parents cannot be whatsoever in any form or shape probably guilty for some things. Absolutely not. I do consider that sometimes the past as well, just like we were talk about today's modern culture is basically holding everything that was of tradition as being backwards and as being basically responsible for any shortcoming that we live in today and all these different things. But at the same time, I do regard and do consider that a lot of the Islamic literature, sometimes there's a lot of emphasis on how parents should be treated, but not enough in talking about how children should be respected. I do recognize that. I do also recognize that there's probably so much emphasis on maybe leaders and their positions and administration, but not much talked about in terms of the population and what their rights are and etc. I do also recognize that there's a lot of emphasis on the people in top positions in the administration and not necessarily the rest of the followers. So there's no doubt that there is some shortcoming within, let's say, our heritage as well, in that some of it definitely needs some revision. But at the same time, we really have to be careful in right now in the situation that we're living in today, in how we let this modern culture infiltrate our minds and make us always think of ourselves as being victims, and then therefore disregard all the contribution that our parents had put in and all the contribution that our parents had invested in us. So Islam redirects you from seeing yourself as a victim. The second that you come in complaining that you are a victim, and especially women, this is more in women than men. And the Prophet ﷺ had emphasized this one, and he had mentioned that for women, تُكْثِرْنَ اللَّعْنَ وَتَكْفُرْنَ الْعَشِيرَ. The Prophet ﷺ had described women for a number of different factors as why this is more common in women than men. Is it more common in women because of their psychology? Is it more common because of their anatomy? Is it more common because of the social dynamic, etc.? All of these different things, they could be factors, but Islamically, that does not give you the justification to consider that, yes, I'm a victim, and therefore Islam wants you and tells the women, especially women, tells them that it is more common that women tukthirna lan, you curse, you damn the things around you, you complain about everything, and therefore that might lead you to hellfire. وَتَكْفُرْنَ الْعَشِيرَ, and you deny any contribution that anyone had given you, whether it's your husband, whether it's your father, your parents, your mother, your family, whatever it is, and always considering that, no, people are supposed to invest in me. The society that we're living in today is basically a society that regards all of us as being entitled, that we are entitled, that everybody is basically living with this mindset that the government is supposed to do this, the society is supposed to, my parents are supposed to do this, everyone is supposed to do everything. But when it comes to their contribution, when it comes to their responsibility, they basically fall short. Why? Because even the type of, let's call it the type of discipline, the modern way of raising children is all about putting the responsibility on the parents and not on the children. So what happens is that the child feels that my parents are supposed to be working, my parents are supposed to be cleaning my house, my parents are supposed to be doing all of this, and I'm supposed to be basically living as an entitled person and basically living and not holding all these responsibilities. Islam tells you that no, when raising the child is supposed to learn how to pick up their own clothes, how to pick up their own food, how to wash dishes, how to clean the house, how it starts from the home. Once it starts from the home and they realize that you are not entitled to live in a clean house and not actually clean it up. And that's the same thing. You're not entitled to having free rent and free utilities basically paid for you, but especially for the boys, you have to learn how to get a job. You have to learn how to contribute, and don't necessarily think, and here's one thing, Islam actually considers that the parents' responsibility, especially over boys, parents' responsibility, especially over boys in terms of giving them food, shelter, all of that, it basically ends when they reach the age of puberty. Keep that one in mind. What does that actually mean? That it's important once the boys reach the age of puberty, it's time for them to learn that they have to go out there in public to learn how to get a job, to learn how to contribute, to learn how to be responsible. And certainly, once they get a job, they have to pay for their utility. They have to pay for a certain amount of rent. They have to invest. Why? Because what that means is that they're learning how not to be entitled and act responsibly. That's what you are teaching them. And this is extremely important. Once you teach the child how to recognize your contribution, that is the only time when they would recognize how to be thankful, and they would recognize all that you had invested in their life. And that's when they will be thankful. And instead of looking at themselves as victims, they will then see themselves as, we were lucky to have our parents contribute in our life and give us this advice and that advice, and probably all the different values that it was important to have them in our lives. And instead of seeing themselves as victims, to see themselves as privileged. Islam wants you to see yourself as privileged, whether you're disabled or whether you're orphaned, or in fact, the Prophet ﷺ had shown us that عَجَبًا لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ, a believer is a strange one. Why? إِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ سَرَّاءَ شَكَرَ فَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُ. Whenever something good happens to them, they're being thankful, and it would be best for them. Yet, when إِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ ضَرَّاءَ صَبَرَ فَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُ, whenever they would have any calamity basically happen to them, they would be patient. Why? And that is وَلَيْسَ ذَلِكَ إِلَّا الْمُؤْمِنِ. The Prophet ﷺ said, and that would not be but for a believer. Why? Because a believer redirects their vision, redirects their focus from seeing themselves as victims. Whether we're talking about probably a calamity happening to them, a Muslim basically rereads everything. Even if it was a calamity, they see it as an opportunity to go up higher. That's a believer. Even if it's a good thing, they see it as something to be thankful, as an opportunity to also probably go up even higher and higher and be thankful. A believer never sees as a calamity as a reason to stay on the ground and just sob their fate. That's why the Prophet ﷺ had told us about the believer, that they are different. They redirect their vision, whether it's a calamity, whether it's perhaps maybe an abusive relationship that they went through, or probably some hardship, etc. A Muslim does not know failure. A Muslim does not know failure because they relate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had said, Inna ma'al usri yusra. With every hardship comes two eases, because a Muslim knows that victory comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that ease comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that success comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore they redirect their vision, not looking at the circumstance, but they look at the Lord of the circumstances. They look at the Lord of the circumstances. So when they're probably going through pain, they would say, Allahumma anta shafi. They would look at that healing through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If they're going through poverty, they look at Ya Razaq, you are the one that gives the provision. They probably go through, no matter what abusive relationship, they know, Inni maghlubun fantasir, Ya Allah, I'm right now weakened, I'm defeated. You are the one that is capable of giving me victory. That's the redirection that a believer embraces. They know no defeat. They know no calamity. They know no pain, but they will always redirect their vision and actually see gain, and see the provisions that they basically have, and see the contributions that others give them, and see that the world is full of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had shown us in His signs for us to redirect our vision, because this is a bridge to the akhirah. This is a bridge to the akhirah. That's a believer. Yet the modern culture is always focused on, yes, you are a victim. If it's a wife, you're a victim. If it's a son, or a daughter, you're a victim. Everybody is a victim. And therefore, we're basically saying that the therapists, the departments are basically making money out of this mindset. They're making money out of this mindset and basically wanting every single person that they have to go and get a therapist and get therapy, and they need this. Why? Because it basically starts making money. Hey, you need a therapist, you need this. Oh, you are actually going to PTSD, you're going to trauma, etc. All of these different things. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling us that actually you have a built-in therapist, and that's your iman. That's your iman. Your built-in therapy is your iman, and also the society is also supposed to be giving you that support as well. But if the society doesn't give you that support, you cannot actually go out there and say, well, the society is responsible for this. And no, Islam tells you, why don't you be the one to make the change? إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Don't wait for people to change your circumstances. You make the change. حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. You make the change on the inside. You can't control what people say, but what you can control, what you hear. Simple as that. Simple as that. Islam tells you your power is within you once you connect to Allah. Your power is within you once you have the faith in your Lord Almighty. You will make and beat all the odds despite perhaps the circumstances not looking like they are in your favor. That's a believer. Recognize the good, put in that energy and that effort, and be consistent and determined in making a difference. That's a believer. So this is just to respond to what Sister Bisharo was actually saying in regards to, not respond, maybe I should have actually said, just my short word in regards to the modern culture, the modern way of speaking about society, speaking about our parents, speaking about the